Здравейте, колеги! Радвам се, че сте тук с нас, че сте избрали да бъдете на нашия вебинар. Това ни е първия вебинар през новата година по чужд език, разбира се. Казвам се Майя Цветкова от издателство Плед България. Работя в маркетинговия отдел и се занимавам с чуждите езици. Да ви представя днешния ни лектор. Тук с нас е Чарлз Стюарт, който е бил, може би, миналата година някои от вас са били на вебинарите. Чарлз вече ми е представил много интересни теми по доста приятен начин. Charles, I'm giving you the word. I have said a few words that we have met last year in previous webinars, also in the Cambridge Day. So it's up to
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. And let me once again welcome everyone. Thank you for attending the session today and taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. Before we look at exactly what the session today will be on, let me just briefly introduce myself. I know that my colleague Maya did give a brief introduction to me, but for those of you who have never attended one of my sessions, my name is Charles Stewart, and I do work for Cambridge University Press and Assessment. My official title is a very long one. You can see it on the screen here. It's Professional Learning and Development Specialist. What I do, I travel around a very large region, of which Central and Eastern Europe is a key area in our region, and I deliver workshops on behalf of Cambridge for English teachers. And I also speak at various conferences, such as the Cambridge Day last year in Sofia. So with that being said, the topic of the session today is something that is very applicable to all of us as young learner teachers, and that is classroom management. But before we look at the aims of the session, I want to hear from you. I want you to think about your own teaching classroom. What classroom management strategies do you currently use in your classroom? Let me hear from you in the chat. Okay, and the last question. This is just simply for you to think, nothing in the chat. When you plan your lessons, what do you consider when planning your lessons? Is it just simply the pages from the book? Are you thinking about pair work, group work, how you're pairing learners up, thinking about potential problems? Just take a few seconds and reflect on what you consider when you're lesson planning. Now, the reason that we began with these questions today is because this is actually what we're going to be looking at in our session today. We're going to be looking at classroom management strategies. First, identifying what classroom management is, the challenges that we face with it, before then looking at some examples from course books and thinking about what we can do with it, how we would manage the pair work and the group work, how we pair our learners together, the various things to consider when planning your lesson, and in the consideration of these, it falls under the umbrella of classroom management. You're thinking ahead about potential problems and challenges that your learners may face. So these are the 4 areas that we will look at in the session today. Now, what is classroom management? When I was writing this session, I went back to the basics, and I went to someone who is the master of ELT teaching, and that is Scrivener. I'm sure that all of us at one point or another have read either all of Scrivener's books that he have read, or at least pieces from them. And regarding classroom management, he says the classroom management choices that you make play a large part in creating the atmosphere of your class. Basically, how it feels to be in the room with you as a teacher. Classroom management is a very vast area. However, classroom management revolves around one single person, and that is the teacher themselves. It's up to us as the teacher to create the atmosphere of learning in the classroom, to create the atmosphere of acceptance, to create the atmosphere of inclusion, Basically, once we as the teacher create the atmosphere, this will inform our choices in how we manage our class. These will help to alleviate a lot of the problems and issues and challenges that we face as the teacher. Therefore, classroom management encompasses every aspect of every lesson with every student. Yes, it is very complex because it involves every aspect of every lesson with every student. Yet we'll see in just a moment that in practice, it's actually a very simple area for us to address as the teacher. It's kind of a contrasting dichotomy that in this, that it's very complex. However, it's very simple whenever we act on it. Keep in mind, though, that with classroom management, usually when you say or ask someone, classroom management, give me a word, that one word will always be something about challenges or problems or something like this. And, it seems like in my classes, when I have taught throughout the years, that it seems like I'm almost a firefighter and I'm fighting, trying to put out one fire after the next, because there are so many problems in the classroom. And I will be honest with you, for several years I really resented this as a teacher. However, I attended a workshop one time that one of my colleagues gave, and she said something that I will never forget. For every problem that we face in the classroom, it's not our job to alleviate the problem, to address the actual problem in the classroom. What our role as the teacher is to look past the problem, look past them acting out in class, look past them not doing their homework to see why. Why are they not doing this? When we as teachers address the why aspect, everything else will fall into place. Now, unfortunately, some of the times we cannot address the why. So, for example, if one of your students is acting out in class and you find out that the reason that they're acting out is because their parents are divorcing, because their grandmother has died, because they have recently moved to a different place, there's many different issues that we cannot control. However, it's our job as a teacher to look past the problem, to look at the cause of the problem and try our best to work on the cause as much as we can. This is what true classroom management is. Classroom management is about more than just the problem. It's looking at the root of the occurrence in the classroom. And because of this, effective classroom management engages our students in such a way to facilitate better learning. You're not just facilitating learning. With effective classroom management, you are facilitated a better type of learning, a learning that goes much deeper and is much more broad in scope. Now, with classroom management, Scrivener goes on to say a couple of statements that I want us very quickly to look at before we delve into a couple of different areas of classroom management. And the first thing that he says several times in several of his books is that classroom management is independent of methodology. And that struck me whenever I read it, and I thought, what does this mean? Well, when we look at it, the most effective teaching and learning is going to happen when learners are actively, what is this word that's missing here? Many of the problems that we face in the classroom, many of the challenges that we face are not these complex methodological topics that you speak about and read about and study about. Effective classroom management is about is independent of that, it is about looking at the problem and making sure that we are acting. And classroom management is about action. It's about making sure that our learners are involved, that they're interested, that they're engaged, because learners respond better when they have a say in a very traditional role of teacher has this misconception in my opinion that the teacher's here, the learners are here. The teacher is here to teach students and they are there to listen and to learn. No. A teacher is a facilitator of learning. A teacher is not the guru. A teacher is not the dictator. The teacher is a facilitator. Therefore, it's our role and responsibility as teachers to bring the students along and to let them have a say in what they study and how they do it, basically. Now, this is not letting students decide, do you want to learn this or not? This is about me saying, I need to teach this. What are some activities that you enjoy doing? Maybe I can include those in. Well, we can either do this or this. Which one would you rather do? Learners respond very well to that, especially older learners. A classroom should be structured in such a way that the teacher and learners can work. Best practice for classroom management consists of creating and fostering an atmosphere when these things thrive. This is what Scrivener is talking about. When we as the teacher facilitate learning rather than dictate it, we create this atmosphere that's more conducive to learning, where the students have a say in the classroom, where they feel appreciated, and where they want to come and where they want to learn. Now, because of this, though, there's this thing that we mentioned earlier where classroom management is very complex. And Scrivener describes classroom management. Just very quickly have a read of this. Just a few seconds, read what's in purple. Classroom management is about facilitating better learning with our students. Classroom management is not about changing the way you teach. Classroom management is recognizing these small practical things that you can do at certain points in the lesson to do things like maintain focus, maintain the attention of your learners, things like strategic pairing of group work. All of these various aspects is what makes classroom management so simple for us to do. Now, for the sake of this workshop, now that we have a basic understanding of what Scrivener says regarding classroom management, we're going to look at these two areas and focus on these in the workshop, and that is pair work and group work and lesson staging. So first of all, think about your classes. Let me hear from all of you in the chat. Please, 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 everyone, let's participate in the chat. What are some activities that you do in your classroom where you pair your students up? So for example, gap fills, you can pair your students up for this. What are some different activities that you do with your learners in pairs in your class? So not everyone participates. Some of them wait for others to do the work. Arguing, low self-esteem. Yeah, if it's not managed properly, definitely it can create some self-esteem issues. So when I was thinking about benefits versus drawbacks of pair work and group work, in my experience that I've had, I see a lot more benefits than drawbacks for group work itself. Some benefits that I came up with, just have a look at the screen here. Things like it enhances communication skills. They're basically taking what they're learning and being able to put it into practice in a very natural way. It helps build confidence in speaking as well, but also in things like listening, things like writing, things like reading, depending on the task. Helps to foster critical thinking and problem solving skills as well, and provides authentic language practice, and it allows for soft skills practice. So soft skills are things like negotiation skills or presentation skills, things like this. With the positive aspects of group work, cooperative learning activities, activities where our learners are working together, have been found to increase the self-confidence of students, even the weaker ones, because basically everyone has a role to play and an important role to play within the group itself. But managing pair work and group work can be quite challenging from time to time. Asking learners to work together, you and you, do this. It's not enough. In my experience, it's not been enough. In order for group work and pair work to truly be successful, for our learners to work together effectively, a lot of that revolves around us as the teacher and the way that we facilitate the activity in the classroom itself. Therefore, the question then becomes with group work, so what exactly do I need to do as the teacher? What is the role that I play in pair work and group work itself? Well, there's actually several different roles that the teacher themselves play in group work, and this includes pair work as well. The teacher is the facilitator of, fill in the gap. Which of these words at the bottom go in the gap? Interaction. We serve as a role model to our students. We serve as the example to our students of how the conversation should go. Therefore, as we're setting up the task, it's our responsibility to make sure that the learners understand what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And usually that is done through me role playing with one of my students exactly what I would like the conversation to be. Therefore, just like with a writing task, you always give learners an example writing piece to serve as the model. For speaking activities, though, we as the teacher become the model for the conversation itself. Another role of the teacher is we are the provider of appropriate blank and blank. Absolutely. Here, tasks and materials. But we also need to be the promoter of positive group. Yes, definitely dynamics. So here, rather than pointing out the group that's not behaving appropriately, it's our job as the facilitator in group work to point out the group that is doing their work appropriately. Focus on this, on positive group dynamics. And here, rather than pointing out the negative aspects, you're pointing out the positive aspects and giving every other group an example of the exact things that you want within the group itself. And lastly, we are the supporter of language through, of course, scaffolding and feedback, two very important aspects of group work. So we can see here from the very beginning where we're giving them the model of how to behave in the group, going through to providing the materials, looking at how the groups work together, but also how the activity unfolds, all the way to the feedback that we give them both throughout the activity and at the end of the activity. We, as a teacher, have roles in pair work from the beginning to the end. Now, how does this tie into classroom management? Once again, look past the problem to the root, the cause of the problem. And I think a lot of times in pair work and group work, when we have groups that are pairs that are not behaving properly, that are not doing the work like we want them to do, a lot of times the reason for that is they don't know how, or they don't understand exactly what they're supposed to do. Therefore, the cause of the problem then becomes us as the teacher in failing to identify how we need to support our learners throughout the group work or the pair work. And I will say, I also have been at fault from time to time as well with my learners in failing to do one of these, failing to recognize one of these. It's something that even the most seasoned and experienced teacher can identify areas for betterment in order to help better facilitate learning and help a better sense of learning to happen with our learners. Now, something that I hear quite a lot from teachers is this. When we do group work, I always notice a few students who seem to hide and manage to say nothing in their group. I try to encourage them, but what more can I do? Imagine that a new teacher, someone straight from university, got a job at your school and you're working alongside of them. And they come to you and they say this, when we do group work, I always notice a few students seem to hide and manage to say nothing in their group. What can I do? What advice would you give them? I'll give you a minute or two to think about it, and please write in the chat, what advice based on your own teaching experience would you give to this teacher? For me, there are a couple of different ideas. So I'd invite them to observe one of my classes. Absolutely. Observation is so key. And some of the best things that I've learned in my own teaching career have come from my colleagues. For me, I would advise them to make sure that we're keeping the work interesting throughout the task. And there are a few ideas of how we can do this that I've used in my own teaching that have just really made a difference in changing the dynamics of group work to keep the interest of my learners throughout the entire activity that we're doing. The first idea involves spies. In the chat, what is a spy? Person who rats on others. Okay, let me ask you this. Someone who follows you closely. Spies look. Spies don't talk to you because they're watching what you're doing. Now, bring this into the classroom with group work. Here, about halfway through the activity, put a picture of a spy on the board and say, right, everyone, stop, look at the board. What is this? It's a spy. Okay, you have 20 seconds in your groups. Who is your spy? And they talk together. Spies, raise your hand. And they raise their hand. Okay, spies, you have 30 seconds to stand up, quietly walk around the room, and to spy on the other groups and see what they're working on. And I found a lot of times in doing this, if they're working, for example, on a gap fill together, there's inevitably one or two that's more difficult and they're not really sure. This gives them the chance to go around and look and to see what the other groups have put. Or if they're having to answer questions in sentences, explain why, it allows them to see the other group's answers as well before then coming back to my group and me telling them what I saw. I have found that in a longer activity, when the interest and activity tends to kind of tank a bit, when the energy level goes down significantly, it's a good idea to do this because it automatically changes the dynamic of what you're doing in the group work. And it allows them to do something that's fun. They're thinking they're cheating by looking at the other papers, but what they're doing is they're actually seeing what the other groups have written and are able to go back and then discuss together what they have seen. Here, critical thinking skills at work here. It's a very, very good way, as I said, to change the complete dynamic of the activity itself. Another idea that several of you may use in your own classroom involves something called an art gallery walk. Now, this activity is when there is something at the end that's tangible. So imagine that they're doing, for example, a piece of writing together. They're writing a story. You would use this whenever there's a story at the end that you could take and use. And what you do with this is each group does a writing, or each group makes a poster. You take them up and you hang them around the room. And then the students in their groups will go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And they're looking at what the other groups have done and they're discussing it with their partner. Usually, this works really well whenever you give them questions to answer with their partner. So, for example, I would post the stories around the room that they've written, and I would say, okay, who are the main characters in each story? That's one question that they have to read and identify. The next one would be something like, what is um, what is the best story that you read and why? And they always ask, well, mine is the best story. Nope, nope, nope. You cannot vote for your own. Who is the best story and why? Here, the idea is in group work, a lot of times people are uninterested in what they're doing in the group as the task because they don't understand why they're doing it. Whatever you create in the classroom, whatever you have your learners to do, make sure that you do not have them to just simply write and then you take it. Make sure that you do something with that writing with them before you take it and read it. It gives them that extra motivation that they need to do the task itself. Therefore, if I'm producing a poster where we will do an art gallery walk, I will say, make sure to do a good job because at the end, we're going to hang them around the room and everyone is going to be able to see your poster. It just gives them that extra bit of motivation to do the task itself. Another idea would be to vary your interaction patterns. So typically, these are typical patterns that we have in the classroom with pair work and group work, something like pairs, groups of 3, groups of 4. Vary it. If they're working with a partner, consider something called lines. This works really well if you have questions that they're discussing with their partner. You basically have them to form 2 lines and they face each other, and you give them a question that they talk about. And then after they have finished, after the time is up, this person goes down to the end and everyone scoots down one. And it gives them a new partner. And then they can discuss the same question, they can discuss a different question. This is really, really good when the book has discuss with your partner questions 1, 2, and 3. Consider doing something like this just simply to vary it. Another idea would be something called wheels, where you have 2 circles, much like the lines, the person across from you you're talking to. And then they simply rotate clockwise, the inner circle. So this person would go here and now talk here. And then they would move here and talk here. Once again, it varies the interaction patterns within the classroom, doing something out of the ordinary in order to motivate our learners to want to do it. They may be here talking to this person and their friend is here. So they will happily talk to this person and this person in order to be able then to speak to their friend for a minute about the question. Play to use this as an advantage. And then the last idea that I will give you, it concerns group roles. Basically here within the group, make sure that everyone has a role. One person in a group of 4, I could have a leader, a secretary, a spokesperson, and a timekeeper. Sometimes you, as the teacher, assign the roles. However, other times I would let my learners decide for themselves, and I would say, okay, you 4 are together, you 4 are together, you 4 are together. Okay, each group needs a leader. Who is your leader? 20 seconds. Okay, leaders, raise your hand. And you're assigning roles within the group, making sure, once again, that everyone has a role to play. And this will help a lot with learners fading into the background. Therefore, consider group roles in the management and the facilitation of larger group activities. Okay, secondly, and moving right along, I know that we have around 15 minutes or so left in the webinar. Managing lesson staging is the other aspect of classroom management that we will look at. Okay, I want you to think, these are the 2 pages that you are going to teach in your classes. These pages, of course, come from the book Superminds. How would you begin your lesson? How would you lead in to this lesson? Let me hear a couple of ideas in the chat of what you would do in your own experience. Okay, well, for me, I would definitely start with the pictures. And this is a very common place. I'm sure that a lot of you have said, well, I would do something with the pictures in leading into it, and I would as well. But I would approach it from slightly a different perspective. Get up. And I would discuss the picture with my learners using these, our 5 senses. Okay, so imagine you are in your bed, it's morning, you wake up, and now it's time for you to get up. You sit up, you stretch. What do you see? Let me hear from you in the chat. What do you see? So for me, I see my clock. What are some things that you see? My wall. Someone sees the window, okay? Ooh, someone sees rain because it's raining. Okay, you're in bed, you wake up, you sit up, you stretch. What do you hear? So someone says it's raining, so perhaps I hear the rain. Ooh, someone hears cars, good. Street noise. Perhaps your alarm. Okay, you wake up, you sit up, you stretch. What do you taste? Ooh, you can taste your mom's breakfast. Taste the cleanliness or my clean teeth. Okay. What can you touch? My hair, good one. My fluffy blanket, yes. I love fluffy blankets. Okay. Lastly, you wake up, you open your eyes, you sit up, you stretch. What do you smell? Coffee, yes. Absolutely, coffee. Perhaps breakfast. Maybe someone is making an egg for breakfast, or someone is making porridge for breakfast. So you can smell this. Okay, scroll through the chat in the last few answers and look at the language that was produced. Clock, mom, window, it's raining, so sentence there. My clean teeth. We have an adjective. My mom's breakfast, possessive. Fluffy blanket, adjective. The smell of the shampoo from the bathroom. Good sentence there. Good descriptive sentence. Activities like this promote active language use better than anything else that you can do in the classroom in a lead-in itself. So, in staging your lesson, how can you manage your learners? By getting their attention from the beginning, by setting them up for success from the beginning, by pulling out everything that they know from the beginning so that they can see exactly how much they do know now. Therefore, use attention grabbers in any point of a lesson. Use it at the beginning, at the start of any activity, at the end of the activity, all the way down to even in the middle of the activity if the intention is loss. Now, here are a list of some attention grabbers. Have a look and read through these attention grabbers. And my question for you is, would you add anything to this list? So for me, I would definitely add the five senses that we did, walking through a picture using your five senses in order to get them interested in the activity. But another activity that I would do would involve something that is called What's in the Magic Bag? So let me stop sharing and let me pin my picture. Yes, so that you can see it. Basically, what this activity involves, an attention getter is a bag. And in the bag, I have things. Now, in the bag, it could be something like this, an actual object, realia. So here in the chat, what is this? What is this? It is a frog. Okay, do you like frogs? Give me a thumbs up if you like frogs. Give me a frowny face if you don't like frogs. For me, I love frogs. I think frogs are really cool. Now, you can have this in the bag, or you could also have something like this. What is this? It's a dog. Okay, flashcards. I use Magic Bag in my class. Absolutely. It's such a versatile activity. Make sure, though, that you go beyond just what is this? What is this? Use it as a catalyst for further discussion. Frog. It's a frog. Okay. The frog. What color is the frog? Do you like frogs? How many of you have ever caught frogs before? Or a dog? Do you like dogs? Is this dog a big dog or a little dog? Which one is better, big or little? How many of you have got a dog? If you could get any dog you want, would it be a big dog or a little dog? Use it to foster conversation. Anything that we do like this is getting their attention, it's grabbing their attention, and it will help to serve to make that personal connection with them and to keep their attention throughout the remainder of the activity itself. So these two things I would definitely add to my list of starters and attention grabbers. So another aspect, though, involves timing and pacing. A story is told that a theater goer was watching an opera by Wagner and found that after 2 hours, I looked at my watch and saw that only 10 minutes had passed. Keep in mind that if we have if we have problems in the classroom where our learners are acting out or they're not engaged, it's simply because for them, this 2 hour lesson, only 10 minutes has passed. And it's our challenge as teachers to facilitate the lesson in such a way that at the end of the lesson, the students are going, "It's over already, really? 2 hours have passed? It seems like 10 minutes ago." By varying your timing and your pacing, it helps manage this aspect a lot. But keep in mind that what works for one class does not necessarily work for another class. What works for one student may not work for another student as well. Therefore, it's important that we're flexible, but that we also anticipate the timings and the pacings as well. Therefore, play with time limits. When we say you have 2 minutes left, 2 more minutes, if I can see that my learners are enjoying the activity, if I can see that they're talking a lot about what they're supposed to be, they're really engaged, I'm not going to stop it in 2 minutes. I'm going to let 5 more minutes pass. But on the flip side of it, if we're in the middle of an activity and I can see that their interest is already waning, then I'm going to say up 2 more minutes, even though I had planned for 5 more minutes. Your lesson plan should never be set in stone. Your lesson plan should never be written in stone. It needs to be flexible. And a good rule of thumb for this is use your empathy to judge the pace. Make sure to read your learners and to not be scared to play with the pacing of your lessons and the timing of your lessons as well. All of these things that we have looked at are very small, concrete things that we can do in our lessons. And in doing so, we're helping to manage our learners much better. We're considering the small little things that we can do for classroom management techniques that will make a huge difference in the lesson itself. Therefore, just very quickly and review some final takeaways. Remember, classroom management is very complex, but it's all about the little things that we can do, the simple things that we can do. Behind every problem lies the reason for the problem. And this is what we need to be addressing as teachers when we can. Make sure as we're teaching our classes, we're a facilitator. We're facilitating better learning. We're not a dictator. We're not the absolute authority. Therefore, make sure to work with your learners together in order to foster an atmosphere that is more conducive to better learning. Remember that in order for our learners to work effectively in groups and pairs, we as the teacher need to make sure that we are facilitating the activities in such a way that is effective for what we are trying to do and what we would like the outcome to be. And lastly, effective lesson staging can support a greater amount of interest, motivation, and learning. We saw in some of the activities that just a little things that you can do, like attention grabbers, go a long way to help motivate our learners to want to learn what we're teaching them. So we've come to the end of our session. Before I show you some resources and give you my email address, I want you to think back on the session today. What is one thing that you learned, or what is one thing that you have seen in the session today that you would like to take and use? Could be something that you learned, something that you knew that was reinforced, or perhaps one of the activities that I showed you that you would like to try. Let me hear from you in the chat. What is one takeaway from this session that you will leave with? Well, I hope that this session was useful for you. I hope that you all can take something that can enhance your own teaching and really help your learners to learn the maximum amount of their potential. Let me leave you with a few resources. These resources will be available at the end of the presentation in one magic QR code. So do not worry about scanning these yet. I'll let you know which QR code to scan. But here is a website that Cambridge has built that has various articles and various tips and techniques and videos revolving around classroom management. Do have a look at that. Couple of books as well that I have found useful in my own teaching. The Scrivener quote and methodology that I gave you at the beginning of the session comes from this book. So, a couple of very useful books involving classroom management. Some of the activities that I did today come from the Cambridge Life Competency Activity Cards. These are a set of activity cards that have ready to use activities that you can pull from and use in your classes. The five senses activity comes from these. So do have a look at these. So with that being said, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for attending the session, and hopefully I will see you in a future session. So thank you very much, and I will turn it back over to my colleague Maya.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Before we wrap up, because this is the thing that it's going to end now, I'd like to thank you, Charles, for such an insightful and engaging talk. We truly appreciate it, what you have shared with us, the time and your expertise. It was very well. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the teachers who joined us today. For sure, your participation made this session even more meaningful.